From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
The Chiefs have a lot of things cooking as they get ready for the NFL draft, and they have a new kid in town. The Chiefs actually signed and made official their new punter, Tyler Newsome. He is in the fold, and things are squared away in Kansas City for how they're going to move forward with the specialists here as they get ready for the 2020 season. Beyond that, a little bit of news. We're going to talk with Matt Derrick and get his impression of the new guy in town, Ricky Seals-Jones. He actually was able to meet with the media and give them some information about the process and that kind of thing. And it all leads up to where the Chiefs are going in this 2020 draft. We're going to talk about that later as well, but I want to give you a couple of highlights. And I thought there were a couple of pieces that really make sense for what Ricky Seals-Jones had to say to the media today. Very interesting guy. Is not, the primetime player. Knows he's coming in here to be a backup, to fight for that second tight end spot. And I think that when you get down to it, it is about continuing to give Patrick as many weapons as possible, no matter what. And a little bit of speed for a guy that's going to line up as a tight end / slot, just like Travis Kelce does quite often, gives you more maneuverability than you normally would have. It's very similar to what I've been talking about, some of the draft prospects, one that we'll talk about with Matt here in the next segment. But a thing that stood out to me very much kind of gives you the idea of what players around the league feel when they talk about playing for Andy Reid. It's definitely a reason, not just Mahomes to come play in Kansas City, but to play for Andy Reid. I think that's how they got some of the guys here before Patrick had his explosion. I think that's going to continue. But Seals-Jones said, quote, "I felt like Kansas City was honest." Also talking with Demetrius Harris and all the things that he had to say previously about how they present themselves. It was like they had said, and what they said, they were not two different things. You got a player who left and still shows respect for that organization and loves that organization. So that gives you a little bit of confidence when you're going in and talking to another team. And they love Demetrius. So it was a perfect fit, and that kind of helped. Then the offense and how they use their 12 personnel is kind of a perfect fit for me, unquote. And that's exactly how it is, a perfect fit. And I like the fact that what he said there means they had specific conversations about the 12 personnel package, running two tight ends, being out there with Kelce, not in replacement of. I think that gets them back to running duels on either side, running stacks. I want to see that trio formation that we've seen in years past, and I think that he makes a nice addition to that group and allows them to do some things that they haven't been able to do with Blake Bell, with even Demetrius, although they tried some things with him. I think that's an interesting fact that they know each other from Cleveland, and that actually helped them get here. It's definitely a strange offseason, and all that plays into the fact that you can't really have that much contact, and that is definitely true of the draft selections as well. And so you can see how the reputation still flows through the league about what it's like to play in Kansas City and for Andy Reid. Now, when we get back, we're going to get Matt Derrick on here, and we're going to go through some of the specifics about how that affects the overall arc of what they have to do now, 10 days from the NFL draft. The Rogue Analytics 2020 NFL Draft Guide is done. It is ready and available at rogueapc.com and has everything you need to get ready for the NFL Draft. With a new graphical ranking system, the Athletic Matrix is included. I have brand new Rogue Analytics production metrics, all included with 330 players evaluated in this draft guide. Put it next to the film, take a look at it, be ready for the NFL Draft, and you can get a discount with the code LOC20 over at rogueapc.com. Go grab the 2020 NFL Draft Guide today. We know that this is a difficult time, and one of our sponsors, Postmates, is here to help. From an early morning breakfast burrito to a 12-pack of beers while you watch something that you're trying to replace sports with, sometimes you just need what you need delivered fast, and that's where Postmates comes in. If you're like me, you probably started thinking about what to eat for dinner when you're eating lunch. They deliver food from every restaurant that is currently open and can bring it right to your door. Postmates doesn't just deliver burgers and sushi. They actually make life easier with grocery runs and whatever they can to help. Convenience stores, clothing stores, you name it. For a limited time, Postmates is giving our listeners $100 of free delivery credit for your first 7 days. To start free deliveries in your area, download the app and use the code LOCKEDONNFL, all one word. That's LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, for $100 in free delivery credit with no minimum purchase during your first 7 days when you download the Postmates app. Anything you need, anytime you need it, Postmate it. It's Tuesday, so that means we are begging Matt Derrick to come back and give us some kind of insight in an offseason that is challenging, to say the least. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing okay, Ryan. You never have to beg me, man. You know I'm always here.
I know. You're doing something important most of the time, though, but, I feel bad when there's, theorizing to do, but not a whole lot of concrete activity. We should be looking at OTAs right now, right?
Yeah, this would be the week that things would be getting started and everything, so... we will get a little bit of news this week because Brett Veach is going to meet and talk with reporters online later this week. So, we will get to hear a little bit and get some nuggets and everything. And on Monday, talk to Ricky Seals-Jones. So every once in a while, you get a little bit of taste of football. But other than that, yeah, right now it's just trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, it is. It is desolate in terms of interaction, but you bring up the new guy, and there are a couple of new guys. Actually, I've been pretty impressed with the rate that since clearing a little bit of cap, thanks to the deal with Sammy Watkins, they've actually been a little bit active. Ricky Seals-Jones, the guy that I think you had the conference call with, impressions of the new kid in town?
Yeah, he seems pretty excited to be in the situation. Can't blame him. He mentioned that he'd heard from some former teammates like Demetrius Harris and Kareem Hunt that Andy Reid's a good guy to play for. Obviously, he's excited to play for Patrick Mahomes and get into an offense like this. Looking forward to playing with Travis Kelce and getting in some of those two tight end sets that Andy Reid loves so much. It's a great fit. I think he's still a little bit of a raw player. And maybe things haven't been as easy for him in the NFL as maybe he expected as a high, big recruit coming into Texas A&M, but still a lot to like there. And, with the Chiefs, maybe they can kind of tap into some of that potential. If he's got room to grow, this is a great place for it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting matchup, too. I think he's much closer, even beyond what Demetrius was, to being somebody who can do some of the things that Travis can do. So it's not so disparate between the starter and the backup, but I don't see him lining up in line. I see them, splitting everybody out. I see more empty sets myself. Does this give you an indication of anything?
Yeah, I still think that the Chiefs are still missing that, blocker who can really get in there and throw their nose in there and really has to want to do that. Seals-Jones has been more of a receiver in his past, and he's still, even though at this point, getting away in his fifth year in the league, he's still basically learning the position. He's still trying to figure out how to become an NFL tight end. And I think you see that at times. And I think he recognizes that, but it also sees that this is a great place to learn. With, Andy Reid, the way he uses the tight ends, having Travis Kelce here, having Tom Melvin, coach. I think it's a really good situation for him. And hey, if they can polish him as a blocker in the limited time that they're going to have for this offseason and for the preseason, I think he could certainly fit in here.
Well, the reason that I feel that it works is because he can be, this is one of maybe 3, 4, 5 at the most places in the NFL where you can be a quote-unquote tight end and not have to put your hand in the dirt every down. For the most part, he'll probably be split out more so than he is lined up in line. I think that plays into what he can do better, and I think it plays into a draft choice out there as well. Another guy that I've been talking about making a positional change exactly like Seals-Jones, going from wide receiver at Notre Dame, coming inside to the tight end spot. And Chase Claypool is a guy that I think could do a very similar thing. Do you think that this is a way to really emphasize the tight end position as more of the wide receiver end of it to try and continue to exploit downfield for Pat Mahomes?
Yeah, and I think you've seen a lot of that in the last couple of seasons, because even with some of the darts that the Chiefs have thrown, it's been with trying to maybe take some guys who were big targets and trying to figure out how to maybe fit them into this offense. And I even go back a couple of seasons ago when you had like a Blake Mack who they tried to turn into a tight end, John Lovett last year that, is still around, and trying to take athletic guys. Jody Fortson, even though they've kind of done the reverse with him, turning him into a receiver, they've still been looking for these, athletic guys with some size that maybe that they can use in the slot. They can line up outside and not worrying about the blocking as much from the tight end position and figuring out how to just deal with that in other ways. Because you're right. I mean, with this offense, the more flexibility you've got and the ability to put those targets out there just makes, Patrick Mahomes that much more deadly. So they seem to be, to me, in the last few seasons, kind of going all in on that approach of just trying to find some guys with athleticism that they can put inside.
Yeah, just for future reference, I am now terming John Lovett as the X Factor.
Why not?
I think his role will be really interesting behind the line of scrimmage this year. And I think you're right. If you can exploit down the field, you're going to get adjustments, right? And when you look at some of the nickelbacks, particularly in the AFC West, you got to like your chances with a bigger bodied slot receiver. I mean, even back to the days of Jason Avant and things that we saw Andy's first go around with trying to theorize that position. Big size, speed. It's all about speed, no matter what on this offense. That's why they brought everyone back. Are you surprised with the status of nearly everyone returning at this point?
A little bit, just because, especially a guy like Demarcus Robinson fell into their laps. I mean, in a normal offseason, I think Demarcus Robinson's gone. I mean, I think he finds a multi-year deal elsewhere that the Chiefs couldn't match. It's just that in this environment, the price came down, the market didn't develop, and they're able to keep him. And even working out the deal with Sammy Watkins, I think a big part of that depended on the fact that the wide receiver market never developed, and there wasn't really any need for Sammy to try and force his way out of KC because there wouldn't have been a better deal out there. So, yeah, I mean, especially if you're just looking at the skill group, I'm surprised that they were able to keep it together. They had a lot of help in that regard, but, that's going to pay big dividends this season. You got to figure just having that entire group back.
And I think it's kudos to the personnel department, Brett Veach in particular, of saying, hey, we want to keep as many guys as possible and actually being, for the most part, able to accomplish it. We don't know what's going on with Chris Jones, but I think leading up to this draft, it changes the way you do things. When we get back from this break, folks, we're going to get into what's going to happen in the next 11 days before this team starts making draft selections. Now, a couple of updates, having this thing all straightened out with technology, right? Like there's no hiccups that are going to come our direction with trying to draft over the phone, right?
No, it's going to be absolutely completely smooth. I mean, what could possibly go wrong with this whole thing?
I just laugh about the juxtaposition of the fact that telephone technology is what? I don't even know how old, to the point that I can't even, but having to use multiple phones is the thing that everybody seems to be worried about. There's dedicated lines to the NFL front office for trades specifically. There's cameras going to be in Andy Reid and Brett Veach's homes, according to reports. Does this just sound like more of a circus than a draft?
Well, I mean, the draft turned into a circus a long time ago, so I guess at this point, nothing is going to surprise me. I mean, I mean, to me, it's a little bit of just what the draft has become. I mean, I remember once upon a time, I mean, they just put all these guys in a hotel and a ballroom, and that was it. I mean, there wasn't any TV. I mean, later on, we bring this and we turned it into a whole show. And now it seems like, to me, I get that everybody, wants more video and maybe they want some of this access and everything. I think they would have been much better off just going as low frills on this as possible, lean on the analysis. I mean, that's what you pay some of the big bucks for some of the TV guys. You bring people in to talk about this stuff. I mean, that's kind of what people want. I don't see that they're giving, at least the NFL's giving people a little bit of what they want from a transparency standpoint. And like you said, putting the cameras in and, with the coaches and the GMs, they'll show a little bit of leg, I guess, and give people a little bit of what they want. But I think we're probably going to end up being disappointed with the end product because I don't think that they're going to give us anything too juicy. But yeah, I mean, to me, I still think that everybody, especially the NFL, I think would just be better suited just going as no frills as possible and just trying to get through this thing, because the more moving parts you have, I think the more potential that things could go wrong. And I fully expect that there's going to be people out there trying to hack into the Zooms and trying to hack into cameras that are in people's houses. So I hope NFL security is on top of things, because it's going to be, there's potential for mayhem.
I'm personally just waiting for that time that somebody's kid runs through the frame or
exactly
dad's hacking up a fur ball, whatever. It's going to be interesting. Real life look at it. And that's the thing that why it's so important to get your perspective rather than mine or anyone else's who doesn't walk into the building, because this is the time of year everything is on fire. Everybody's got an opinion about where these draft picks are going, how they're going to try to build this team, add to this team, whatever you want to call it. But in dealing with and watching this organization for the last couple of years, I get the sense that there's not a whole lot of panic, that they have tiers of players available, but we've seen them make a couple of what I feel are kind of sweetheart picks in the last couple of years. How do you feel about the way that they're going about and if this changes their philosophy?
Well, there's a lot of things to that. And I mean, one of them, the philosophies that Brett Veach and Andy Reid shares, and I think we've talked about this before, is wanting to go into the draft where you don't have the feeling that you're forced into making a pick. And that's why I think, especially Bashaud Breeland coming back to the team, is so critical, because that's the one piece, the final piece that they kind of fit in there, so that you're not going into this and this team thinking to themselves, good grief, we can't get past 32 without a cornerback. Now they've opened it up. I mean, so now they've allowed themselves to do what this team wants to do, which is to go into a draft with the philosophy of best available athlete. That's what they can do, the best player available. That's what they can go for with all their picks now. So that's a philosophy that they've always felt, is that if they had to play a game in April, they could go out and play a game in April. And they feel pretty good about where they are right now. The rest of it, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, Dio, in a draft like this, organization is going to be huge. And I know for a fact that there are other organizations around the league that just don't have any sense when it comes to just making sure everybody's on the same page, knows what they're doing, has the same philosophies, and is as detailed as these guys are. So I think that's going to be a huge thing for this. There's not going to be any panic. These guys don't do that. I mean, when you got Andy Reid at the top of your chain, I mean, panic's just not what happens, for better or for worse. So I think this team and this organization is pretty well suited for what's going to come their way. And I know they're preparing for it. They're going through a lot of different scenarios, just fake drafts, working with the technology, figuring out how things are going to, the workflow, the conversation, all of that, how it's going to work. And just going into it from that standpoint, prepared as best as they can.
Now, this is a team that has lost some backups. But like you said, with Bashaud Breeland returning, with Sammy Watkins getting restructured, they've lost one starter on offense that played in the Super Bowl and Wisniewski. They've lost whoever, I don't even remember who started in Alex Okafor's place out there. But there are two players on defense with question marks physically, Okafor being one, and Juan Thornhill's return supposedly was set for training camp. I'm not sure if I am going to hold them to that. There's always some play in there, especially a late season injury like that. But I have to feel like overall, the ability to go where they feel that they have to go to get value, I think that's a plus, like you said. But this has got to be still a pretty defense-heavy draft, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think so. If for any reason that, once again, I mean, I tell people, if you want to know which way a team's going to draft, look at who their free agents are going to be next offseason. You're not drafting, especially a team that's coming off a Super Bowl win. You're not drafting for starters in 2020. You're drafting for people who can make contributions in 2021. And you're right. I mean, they've got cornerback, linebacker, defensive end, even, with Chris Jones' status being up in the air, defensive line, really anything except maybe your safeties, going into 2021, you're looking at as potential needs. So, yeah, I mean, defense is probably the one area, because on offense, as we've discussed, I mean, they're pretty well set in a lot of positions. I mean, offensive line, I think, is a spot where they can certainly look for. But you even with some guys like, Travis Kelce's got a, potential renegotiation coming up. Offense, that's, receiver. I mean, with Hardman and Hill, set for a little while, you don't have those glaring needs where you're saying, okay, in 2021, you need a starter at this spot. Maybe like I said, maybe you're getting there on the offensive line with some positions. You do need to eventually, start looking for somebody who can back up Travis Kelce, but you're looking at on the defensive side of the football of definitely needing to come out of here with starters who can play for you in 2021.
And that's kind of where I get back to. And I think a sneaky position that may end up being value for this team at some pick. I'm somewhere between 96 and 138. I think that there's going to be something there that they might have to look at. And that's because of the age of the offensive tackles. I feel like that's something, maybe not 21, but definitely in 22 could really be something that sneaks up on them. Do you think because the depth of this tackle class is something they could look at?
It could be. I mean, I know it seems like right now there's a perception that when you're talking about the value at certain positions, there seems to be a perception that there's going to be a run on offensive tackles and quarterbacks in the first round. And if that's the case, and, maybe that could be somewhat similar to like last year where, cornerback gets completely overlooked until later in the draft and the Chiefs are sitting there at 32. And suddenly you got the choice of the sixth best offensive tackle or the number one corner or number 3 edge rusher, whatever it may be. I mean, maybe it's the number 3 linebacker. I mean, there's some opportunities that could arise at that spot, even if the Chiefs felt they needed to make a move up. I mean, they might be in a position where at some positions outside of maybe the places where it looked like there could be a run that you could find some real value.
I certainly hope that value is not that hard to find and they don't have to spend capital for it, is my personal hope. But, folks, we're going to come back tomorrow and talk with Matt about Chris Jones and the structure of the defense and what might happen there. So for today, we'll say thanks for listening to us. Thanks for Matt for being here. Hope that you stay safe out there, and we'll be back with you tomorrow. Ryan Tracy is the founder of Rogue Analytics and the host of RGR Football on YouTube. Follow him there. Chris Clark is a senior analyst at ChiefsDigest.com, where you can get his work. Rate and review at Apple Podcasts and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Thank you.